We're now going to cover measuring distance in the CloudCaster Lite viewer. To access the measurement tools, click the measure button to open the panel. The standard workflow for measuring points is to first click the inspect new point button and to find the general area you intend to take your measurements. We're going to zoom in now and we'll take a few measurements around this window. Because I don't like the distortion that happens as I move the model, and that's a function of the camera's field of view, I'm going to make the camera field of view much smaller than it is now. And you'll note as I rotate the model, the distortion is much better. So now that we've zoomed into the area we wish to measure, we'll go ahead and take a few measurements. To measure your first point, you'll click the Pick Point button, and then you'll click the desired point in the model. Each time you click the Pick Point button and click a 3D point in the model, the CloudCaster engine attempts to find the nearest 3D coordinate within 3 screen pixels of your click. If you click a point in the model that does not have a 3D coordinate within 3 pixels, your pick point action will fail, and I'll demonstrate that now. I'll pick a point out here. There's no corresponding 3D coordinate. The action fails, and nothing happens until I find a good point. As you click new points, a line with the distance value is snapped between the previous point and the new one. And as you move about the model clicking points, all the distances are listed in the view space, and you can zoom in and out and they stay there. And you can actually put specific labels or custom labels for each of the pick points by simply clicking in the label field in the measure panel and renaming them. And you'll see the label updated to reflect our new name. At any time, if you're unhappy with your current picked point, you can click the Clear Last button and it will remove the previous point. And you can do this a number of times to backtrack. Or you can click the Clear All button to instantly remove all measurements from the screen. We're now going to cover using the saved view function. This works a little bit different depending upon whether the project was published with the personal edition or the commercial edition of the software. If your publishing author published the project with the personal edition, your saved view function will be limited to the dimensions of the browser screen. However, I published this project with the commercial edition of the software, and so I can actually create very high resolution renders of my scene, including measurements. So what we'll do here is take a few measurements of a window, and then we'll generate a very high resolution render of the full model, complete with those measurements. So we're happy with our results. You can see the data is quite accurate despite my somewhat sloppy picking. The distance values are quite consistent between the left and right sides and the top and bottom of the window. Now that we're happy with this, we want to do a high resolution render and, for instance, share this with a colleague. So we're going to click the Save View button. And because we'd like to provide a little bit of visual context for these measurements, we're going to render a virtual camera frame much larger than the current browser. The current browser dimensions are 2514 by 1335. Using the commercial edition, your maximum dimensions are 4096 by 4096 pixels. That generates a 16 megapixel render. We don't need that much resolution in this example, so we're just going to say 3200 by 3200. Need to unclick the aspect ratio button. And now we'll click go. And the viewer is rendering the image on the fly based upon what was in the view space at that moment. But while the render happens at the top right, you can continue to interact with the model, and the render engine will do its thing in the background and let you know when it's ready to save your image. So we're going to clear all the measurements here, and we're going to go ahead and move to our next area of interest, take some more measurements and render those. And we'll save our earlier rendered image. And if you'll recall, we only had a small section of the model in the view space at the time of render, but let's take a look at our image now. And you can see we have a much larger virtual camera frame that was rendered based upon the dimensions we set. This is what we saw in the browser, but you can see we can pan through the model and we have much more information than was in the browser window at the moment of render. Using this technique, you can generate very high quality prints with measurements using orthographic mode or really whatever suits your fancy, and this way you can give very detailed information and share that with your colleagues or friends or whatever audience you have.